Hogan's Heroes may seem like an unlikely candidate for a spy show, but it cleverly walks the fence between utter absurdity and farce, and on the other side, covert operations. In its own quirky way, it is a spy show, and by the end of this episode, you'll be convinced as well. Hi, this is Dan.
And Tom.
From our podcast, Cracking the Code of Spy Movies, and our website, spymovienavigator.com, the premier go-to resources for spy movie fans. We're here to enhance your viewing experience. All right, let's see what Hogan's Heroes is all about. It's a sitcom set in a World War II prisoner of war camp run by the Nazis. The show is on American television and ran 168 episodes, 6 seasons. It was longer than the war. From September 1965 to April 1971. That's a pretty darn good run for any sitcom, really.
Yeah, now realize at 168 shows, half hour each, you sit down to binge watch this, you're going to be there for a while.
Yeah. All right. Stalag 13, which is the prisoner of war camp that Hogan's Heroes are in, it was an outdoor film set that was built in 1964 near the northwest corner of RKO, 40 acres in Culver City, California. It was used to depict various prisoner camps, and of course here for Hogan's Heroes. But in 1968, it also hosted a Mission Impossible crew.
You've got to like these outdoor studios. The fact that they can do that in California because they don't get that much rain. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they don't get that much rain, and it was all winter scenes in Hogan's Heroes. They all had the heavy coats on. They must have been sweating their heads off. All right, let's crack the code on why this show was successful. First, let's look at the premise. The show's premise is deceptively simple. American Colonel Robert Hogan, played by Bob Crane, and his band of fellow prisoners of war are incarcerated at Stalag 13, a Nazi prisoner camp. His team is chartered with helping others escape and to perform various missions to help the Allied war effort. This is cool.
It is.
Now, Hogan's Heroes is a definite play off the 1953 movie Stalag 17, a very serious World War II prisoner of war movie.
Definitely not a comedy.
No, William Holden, Don Taylor, and Otto Preminger. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Stalag 13 here and Hogan's Heroes definitely built off of that movie.
Yeah, it might have had a little influence on it, right? But now
yeah.
there was a real Stalag 13 located near Nuremberg. And there were the equivalents of Klink and Schultz in the real Stalag 13, as well as there being a secret radio, which is a big part of this show. So there's definitely some reality around the fringes of this thing.
Yeah, and they weave in reality in terms of what really was happening during the war. It's not all chronologically the same here, so they weren't making that kind of an attempt. But there are real events too that they talk about.
We'll talk about some of those in this episode as well.
Yeah, they were indeed these camps run by the Luftwaffe called Stalag Luft, short for Stammenlager Luft, or permanent camps for airmen. This Stalag 13 in Hogan's Heroes is for captured Allied airmen as well. Other Stalags were for general prisoners of war, mostly American, British, Serbian, and others. Hogan's Heroes is a genuine sitcom, but Germans are getting killed via the covert operations that Hogan's Heroes perform. Beneath the surface, they've established a secret complex within and below the camp's grounds with multiple secret tunnels. The one we see most exits above ground through a tree stump. I love that one.
Yeah, that's great, because it doesn't exactly look like a tree stump. It's close.
Yeah. There are laboratories for building explosives and devices, a communications network that allows them to reach an Allied sub, and plenty more. It's all amusing, but it's all used to beat the Germans and win the war. And I'm telling you, there's violence in this sitcom. Serious violence.
There definitely is, but they don't show you a lot of blood and gore and guts.
No.
Yeah. Now, this hidden base, right, that they've got, it becomes the hub for their sabotage and their espionage and rescue operations because they're fighting against the Third Reich. And it's a way to help win the war. And as we said earlier, Hogan's team of prisoners is not to escape for real. Right? These guys don't escape.
Yeah.
They're too valuable to the Allied effort right where they are. And so when Klink talks about the fact that nobody's ever escaped from Stalag 13, these guys don't want to escape because they're doing this espionage stuff. Now, it's funny because they do come and go at will. They leave the camp and they go into Hammelburg, which is one of the towns in the series. And we're told that the camp is close to Hammelburg.
Yeah.
And in this one episode called Killer Klink, Sergeant Schultz played brilliantly by John Banner. That is a wonderful performance that John Banner gives as Schultz. Yeah. Now, he gives us a clue as to how close some of these towns are.
How far is Heidelberg?
Heidelberg, 106 5/7 kilometer. Lovely town. I'm glad to go back there.
Back there?
It's my hometown.
Now, you know me. I hear that, and I'm going to look it up. And unless they're talking about like straight miles, not roads or anything, and I don't even think it's right, straight roads. Based on the current roads, when I look on the map, Heidelberg is just over 200 kilometers from Hammelburg. So unless the camp is like 30 miles or so from Hammelburg, the math just doesn't work.
No, I don't think.
And throughout the series, they make it seem like Hammelburg's closer to that. And then in the episode Anchors Away, Men of Stalag 13, Klink says they're 60 miles from the North Sea.
Yeah.
Well, Hammelburg's like 400 miles away from the sea. So there's definitely a continuity problem here. But my guess is back when you were watching the show, you weren't on Google Maps trying to figure this out.
Yeah, you weren't paying attention to any of that anyway. But yeah, their continuity is not spot on because they didn't care at that point about having the continuity.
Well, maybe the James Bond series influenced the lack of continuity in this one.
Yeah, the early ones. All right, let's look at the cast because the cast was fantastic. Colonel Hogan is the senior ranking POW officer and the leader of the camp. And although the camp started with 103 Allied prisoners of war, POWs, during the first season, as the series progressed, the camp's population grew, but we never heard another number. We just heard it has grown.
Yeah, and we don't see many of these prisoners, right? And sometimes there's some background prisoners, but
no, you never see them really. When you see the roll call, it's basic Hogan's group.
Yeah, it's Hogan's team. That 103 prisoners, you never really see all of them.
Yeah, they're background guys. Hogan himself, from what we could determine, was shot down early in the war, like maybe 1942. And we'll see throughout Hogan's Heroes, there are often references made to actual World War II events, raids, bombings, and individual people as well. So this date that Hogan was shot down comes very close time-wise to actual historical bombing raids that, at the time, as referenced in the episode Hogan Gives a Birthday Party, September 1966, there are events that happen around that time. And here in this one episode, this General Biedenbender is the reason Hogan was shot down, as he created the plan to shoot down Hogan over Hamburg because he studied Hogan's tactical planning, which was sometimes, he said, over elaborate.
So, that's a funny scene when he gives it to him.
So, of course, there were bombing raids over Hamburg. So, again, this is where Hogan got shot down. And now he's running the camp as the senior ranking POW officer.
All right. Now, Hogan's regular gang of heroes, the people we see all the time, are going to be Staff Sergeant James Kinchlow, played by Ivan Dixon.
Yeah, now, call him Kinch.
Yeah, they called him Kinch. His specialty was communications, code, and more. Really good, very necessary role, and very well played by Ivan Dixon.
Yeah, he was with the show for the first 5 seasons. 6th season, he was off.
Yeah. Now, Corporal Peter Newkirk is played by Richard Dawson.
Yeah.
And he's kind of a smart-ass British POW. Yeah. And his specialty was sleight of hand, pickpocketing, breaking into safes, disguises, and forgery.
Yep.
Technical Sergeant Andrew Carter is played by Larry Hovis. And he was their kind of chemist, bomb maker, and device maker. He was an explosives expert with a knack for impersonations, too. And he often plays a German officer.
Yeah. Now, in one episode, he said, he worked in a drugstore, so he knows a lot about the kind of chemicals and stuff. He worked in a drugstore.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so now the other thing is, in the first episode, he was captured and brought into Stalag 13. He's the one you see come into camp at the beginning of the series. Now, to me, he also has no situational awareness. I mean, he may be smart with explosives, but he says some of the stupidest things at the stupidest times.
Yes.
But then every so often he comes up with something that's like, how did you come up with that? I thought you were an idiot.
No, his technical expertise is fantastic. His situational stuff. But that's his character, and he plays it thoroughly and consistently like that. Each of these guys plays their character 100% in their role. And the writers did a good job with that. And then I love LeBeau, right?
Gotta like LeBeau.
Corporal Louis LeBeau. He's played by Robert Clary. I mean, his specialty was cooking, knowing the French geography, playing certain roles for the fake escapes, and a lot more. He actually did some creating fake German uniforms, and Newkirk did that, I think, as well. Again, great at creating all the fake stuff they needed, and he was good.
Yeah, well, and Robert Clary was pretty small. I don't know his size, but he was pretty small. So he would be the one that would have to go into some really tight spaces. Like there's that one episode on the radio controlled tank, and he has to get into that tank, and it's really small. He can do it.
Yeah. He did a great job. Again, all these guys we're mentioning here, fantastic in their roles, consistent in their roles throughout the series. So those are the key prisoners. And then we have the two main Germans. I mean, Colonel Klink, he's the commandant of Stalag 13. He's played by Werner Klemperer. He is the inept and self-important camp commandant who always thinks he is in control, but rarely is.
I like the self-important term you used there for him, because he sure thinks he's got it going.
Yes, because no one's ever escaped from Stalag 13. He's so proud of that. And then we got Sergeant Schultz, played by John Banner. We mentioned him. He's one of the stars of this show. I'm telling you, he is a lovable, bumbling sergeant who often turns a blind eye to the prisoners' activities with his catchphrase,
"I see nothing."
You know, they're all speaking English, of course, in Germany, but you got to run with that.
Now, that clip was from episode 1, and it's just I see nothing.
Yeah.
And that episode was black and white, by the way. Everything else was in color. But throughout the series, Schultz has a lot of different derivations of that phrase. It's not just I see nothing. It's I know nothing. I hear nothing. You know, it's whatever, nothing. And sometimes he repeats the nothing. And so let's hear a longer version of it, because it is his catchphrase. And this is season 5, episode 18.
I hear nothing. I see nothing. Nothing.
He really gives it all there.
He was so good. He was Austrian born, so I think just doing this German accent was pretty easy for him, but he is so damn good. He really is the star of the show. He's fantastic in every scene he's in.
And the cool thing is they don't just have him play Schultz, right? He takes on some other roles in the series where he's just playing somebody different. He's
sometimes
it's Schultz trying to play somebody different. Sometimes it's just him being somebody different.
Yeah.
And
looking for ways to extend his ability to act. But he does a perfect job 100% of the time. Besides Klink and Schultz, the recurring Germans who appear in lots of episodes were General Albert Burkhalter, brilliantly played by Leon Askin.
Oh yeah, he was good.
Gestapo SS Major Wolfgang Hochstetter, and he's played by Howard Kane. Kane is fantastic also in his role.
He is.
Beautiful guys, believable guys, fantastic.
He had multiple roles before they gave him Hochstetter. So I think they were like, we've got this guy, we really like him, we got to figure out what we're going to do with him. They create the Hochstetter character, and boom, it was magic.
Yeah. Now Klink had 2 secretaries throughout the seasons. Cynthia Lynn played Helga, Klink's secretary for the first season, 1965 and 66. And Sigrid Valdis later plays Hilda, Klink's secretary. She and Bob Crane actually got married in real life. So prior to Hogan's Heroes, she played Anna, one of Flint's playmates in Our Man Flint.
Her real name, because Sigrid Valdis was her acting name, right, or her stage name, right? Yeah. Her real name was Patricia Olson, and she was in a movie called Autofocus, and was played by Maria Bello in that. Now, Autofocus was a movie about Bob Crane, how he kind of fell into a bad crowd after he became successful here on Hogan's Heroes, and he eventually got murdered. And so here, after his death, and this just cracks me up because we're spy movie fans here. After his death, Patricia Olson moves to Seattle and ends up on the cast of her son's radio show, which, get ready, spy fans, the name of that show, Shaken Not Stirred. I love little things like that.
Yeah. All right, these actors were in most of the episodes, and they played their roles, again, very well. The show was well cast. The casting directors did fabulous jobs in all of these episodes.
Well, and it's not just these main players we're talking about here, right? It's all of the actors that come and go throughout the series as they're moving people through the camp.
Yeah. They got a lot of guest actors as well coming in and out through the camp. So this was the clever way of them being able to introduce new people and new personnel into the shows. And
well, and
beyond
and
the
sometimes
original
they'd have people come in that were playing different roles in different episodes too. They were just character actors coming in, boom, doing their role. I mean, the guy Gavin McLeod, who was Murray Slaughter in the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and the captain on the Love Boat.
Yeah,
right. He's in like 4 of them. As
Father
different
Mulcahy
roles.
was in there too.
William
For
Christopher.
one of the episodes.
Yeah, William Christopher.
MASH, right.
So actually more than one. See, and that's the cool thing is some of these actors would come in and play different roles in different episodes, and that's cool.
Yeah. All right, let's look at the actual stuff that they did. Covert intelligence and sabotage. This is the serious stuff of the show, even though this is a comedy, and you will laugh and you will smile virtually any episode you watch. While Colonel Klink, the bumbling camp commandant, and Sergeant Schultz, the equally clueless sergeant of the guard, while they believe they're running a tight ship, Hogan and his team secretly use the camp for Allied espionage and sabotage on a regular basis. They conduct missions in German towns. They blow up manufacturing and refinery plants on a regular basis. They sabotage German convoys, munitions dumps, cannon factories, new technology and equipment, trucks carrying experimental jet fuel. They blow up trains and a lot more. They actually are killing Germans in this show. You do not see them getting killed. They're very good at not showing you that, but you see the explosions. You see trains crashing off bridges. You hear the sounds of cars blowing up.
And I like how they keep that violence off the screen. I mean,
yeah.
And I
they
wonder
don't have to show any of it.
If it had been a movie today, my guess is you would have seen it. And here it's just,
but you know
there
what?
in the background.
It's great they don't, because they're doing it often. Like in season 2, episode 1, they steal a German plane and bomb a refinery.
Yeah, that's true. Now, besides that, they're also constantly sending and receiving messages to and from the Allies, and often use a variety of means to pass messages, not just the hidden radio they have.
Right.
And in the season 5, episode 12, it was called The Antique, Hogan convinces Klink his cuckoo clock is her rare antique and pays him money for it. It's a pretty funny scene.
Yeah, that's a good episode.
And he uses it to pass along critical information to the Allies by shipping it elsewhere.
Yeah, that reminded me of the Sherlock Holmes movie, Dressed to Kill, where one of the musical boxes that are made in prison, they're sent to stores and they contain a code that the enemy must retrieve. So it's a similar kind of thing here.
Yeah, and we see that, and they use it more than once right here. So like in season 1, episode 8, this movies are your best escape. They have a message stored in a movie camera that was supposedly filming a documentary of the camp. And of course, Klink is like, oh yes, I'm getting a documentary of my camp. This is cool. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. I love the names of their episodes too. So in season 5, episode 17, named Fat Herman Go Home, Hogan's heroes steal back the treasured art that the Germans had stolen from museums, and they ship them back to the Allies. Now, we know the Germans really did steal tremendous artwork from museums in the war. Reference the movie The Monument Men, which is all about this real event. So we like that Hogan's Heroes sometimes references historical events.
That's right in our wheelhouse, Dan. Right? Because we look for these things.
Yeah, we love that. In another episode, season 2, episode 12, 1966, the heroes are trying to smuggle top secret plans of German fortifications to the Allies. That episode was entitled, Will the Real Adolf Please Stand Up? I love
like you
it.
say, just great titles.
Yeah, obviously is an homage to a popular television show at that time, To Tell the Truth, which aired from 1956 to 1968. In that show, the panel tries to guess which of 3 people is telling the truth as to who they really are. And after all the questioning and everything is completed by the panel, the host says, will the real XX please stand up? So the title of this, Will the Real Adolf Please Stand Up, is fantastic.
Yep, and that's cool because they're taking a current game show and kind of playing off of that. They just do a great job of that.
Yeah. Now, we said that, hey, they're really blowing up stuff and they're really killing Germans. Here's a clip from season 2, episode 5, that shows us precisely that this is what they're doing.
And this one is called The Battle of Stalag 13.
Yesterday, I was only worried about the Russian front. Today, it looks like paradise.
Herr Commandant, it is not my place to say anything, but...
Then don't.
It was not a very good place to hide the cars.
I have to agree with Schultz.
Hogan.
Forget I said it.
What am I going to do?
Put your fingers in your ears.
What? What was that?
Sounded like a staff car blew up. Coincidence. Another staff car.
Hogan, you knew they were going to blow up?
Of course. Von Kattenhorn and Feldkamp double-crossed each other.
Did you expect me to believe that?
No, sir. But it's going to look a lot neater on your report to Berlin.
Okay.
He's just always playing Klink.
Yeah, constantly. Every episode he's playing Klink off. But here, they blew up 2 staff cars that just left there with Germans in it. So there you go. This is what we're saying, that this show is violent. They're actually killing Germans in this show. Now, when the Germans are playing war games outside Stalag 13, Hogan's group replaces the blanks that the Germans are using with live ammunition in the episode titled Praise the Führer and Pass the Ammunition, season 2, episode 19. And in the same episode, we hear that one of the German brigades was wiped out by a live hand grenade.
Something wrong, sir?
A terrible tragedy just happened at the war games. Some live ammunition got mixed up with blanks. Oh, it must have been horrible.
What a shame. Was that Colonel Deutsch calling?
Our entire command post was wiped out by a live grenade.
Live grenade?
One of our crack SS units was completely put out of commission.
This is typical of how Hogan's Heroes operated on a comedy show. They were killing Germans.
Yeah, a comedy
with their
show.
espionage stuff.
Yeah, a comedy show based on espionage, covert operations, and killing Germans.
Yeah, every show almost. All right.
Now, we mentioned this radio. So they have this communication system built that they can broadcast to an Allied submarine. And the Allies can communicate with them on a fairly regular basis. Not all the time, but fairly regular.
Yeah.
And during the early years of Hogan's Heroes, the Heroes radio code name was Goldilocks. And the submarine was always Mama Bear. So it was always Goldilocks calling Mama Bear. And England was Papa Bear.
Yeah.
But later on, Hogan somehow became Papa Bear.
Yeah.
And their underground, I mean, it's like they switched it. And the underground
Continuity.
contact in London was Goldilocks.
Yeah. I don't know why they did that, but
Yeah, kind of weird. But
that was weird. Yeah, that was weird.
But the point I'm trying to make is they had recognizable code names as part of their operations.
Yeah, they had all kinds of cool things there. Like when they were going to communicate, they had to pump up the antenna, and it was the flagpole that was on the roof of their barracks went higher. The pole
Yes.
went higher. The ball
pole.
went higher. That was their antenna. I mean, they had all kind. They had the periscope. They had the thing coming out of the water barrel outside, like a little periscope that they could look. I mean, they did all kinds of cool things that were just ridiculous, but cool. All
And they were doing that operating under the noses of their captors. I mean, it's just pretty cool how they do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Colonel Klink brags just about every show how no one has ever successfully escaped Stalag 13. Hogan has a successful covert headquarters right in the German POW camp. And of course, it is ridiculous and unrealistic what they get away with and what they are able to accomplish here, partly due to the incompetent Colonel Wilhelm Klink, who runs the camp, and equally incompetent Sergeant at Arms, Sergeant Schultz. He really doesn't like the war. He's not too partial to it. So in season 4, episode 1, after he told he's going to the Eastern Front, Klink asks,
You want Germany to win the war, don't you?
Yeah.
By being transferred to the Eastern Front, you can make that possible.
Would it be so bad if we lost the war?
Schultz, we're going to miss your sense of humor around here.
I love that. Would it
Yeah.
be so bad if we lost the war?
Well, I mean, Schultz really doesn't give a darn, right? I mean,
No,
he can be paid off. He just wants to live a happy life.
He doesn't want to risk his life for anything. In one show, Klink tells him to guard this with your life. He says, with my life? Hey, he doesn't want it. Then another, he tells Hogan,
Colonel Hogan, if you ever escape,
Yeah?
be a good fellow and take me with you.
I love it. And then another one, when it comes to war, I do not like to take sides, Schultz says.
Yeah, and that's just all indicative of the whole interplay between Schultz and Hogan's heroes, and Hogan especially, because they just have this banter that just keeps going, and Schultz just slips this stuff in.
Schultz, they kind of like each other, actually, I think, you wouldn't ever see them doing something really bad to Schultz. They set him up and stuff, and they use him, and they know he's not going to go tell on them because of his situation. He doesn't want to ever go to the Russian front. So when Schultz, when he realizes Hogan was up to something, he remained happily ignorant. Again, his famous lines, of course, is, I know nothing. It's like, he never knows anything.
He says
one show,
lot.
I think, that was called Schultz Finally Knows Something.
Yeah.
The title of one of the shows.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So Dan, actually, what we didn't do at the beginning here is we didn't give our shout out. So let's give a shout out to a couple of our listeners who provided us feedback on our Cracking the Code of Spy Movies podcasts.
Good.
And we have feedback here on our Build a Bond episode where we told you how they needed to build the next James Bond. Yeah. And Jim Phelps said, another great listen. Thanks, fellas. And John Moss said, love this episode, all caps. You gotta love it. So thanks a lot, guys. We really do appreciate it and love hearing from our listeners. So give us feedback and we'll give you a shout out too. Thank you so much.
All right. Great. Thanks, guys. All right, let's look at another reason why this show is successful. The lunatics are running the asylum trope. I mean, we've seen it in other things too, but Hogan's Heroes takes the classic lunatics running the asylum trope to new heights. The prisoners outwit their captors, manipulate situations, pull off daring missions, all while maintaining a facade of incompetence. It's a delightful blend of humor and cunning, with Hogan being the mastermind behind all of this. Hogan is always so cool and always comes up with a plan.
Well,
He's
and that's
that good.
And that's the cool thing is, I mean, he's played so well by Bob Crane, and there are episodes where he's like, hey, I got to think about this for a second. And somebody might say something and boom, he's got a new idea.
Yeah. He listens to his guys. And it generates ideas for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
sometimes they're unlikely, his plans, but they're doable in one sense or another.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
The Commandant, Colonel Klink, he thinks he always has the better of Hogan and the prisoners, but Klemperer plays it well, looking sometimes doubtingly at Hogan sometimes at the conclusion of a conversation with him, like, no, I know Hogan.
How did you pull that one off on me?
Yeah.
And Bob Crane's Colonel Robert Hogan, he was the master of these witty and instant comebacks, which you absolutely love, right? We love the quips in the Bond movies. You've got quips here too. And while outsmarting Colonel Klink or baffling Hochstetter or even Schultz, his verbal acrobatics were just a delight to hear. I mean, it almost always brought out at least a smile, if not a laugh, when you're listening.
Yeah. I mean, his lines were well written and well delivered. And at every chance, a mockery or an insult to the Commandant or the Nazis is there. I mean, he's just constantly barraging them with insults, mocking Klink in very clever ways. And one time, for instance, Klink says to Hogan, if anyone does escape, I hope it's you. Because he's thinking, oh man, he's outsmarting me. But Hogan quickly comes back and says, I'll never ruin your record. Boom, a slap in the face to Klink is like, oh man, I can't even get rid of him if I wanted to.
Exactly.
And Sergeant Schultz, who really likes Hogan, in one episode says, Colonel Hogan, I know from experience that when you decide to do something that looks good for the Germans, it is bad for the Germans.
At least Schultz gets it.
Yeah, Schultz gets it. And Hogan just smiles. But even the Germans aren't that impressed with Klink. I mean, Major Hochstetter and General Burkhalter from the SS are constantly mocking Klink. If Klink did not have a record of no successful escapes from Stalag 13, he would be on the Russian front, which is a threat in about every other episode.
Yeah, everything is we're going to send you to the Russian front if this doesn't work. Which is just a riot.
Would you like to be wearing snowshoes?
But there's snow in the camp. You know, what do you know? All right, let's go to the next reason why this is such a good series. And there's a new twist on violence. And we've kind of talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
Unlike gritty war dramas, Hogan's Heroes avoid showing us the result of the violence. You don't see brutal battles or intense combat scenes. I mean, you don't have bloods and bodies falling apart and everything, arms blown off or whatever.
Yep.
Instead, the humor arises from the absurdity of the situation. Like that clip we played, put your fingers in your ears and boom, how did you know that car was going to explode? The prisoner's ability to outsmart the Nazis is a staple of this show. And it's a refreshing take on wartime storytelling.
It is.
But again, as we've said, this is not a comedy without violence. They do kill Germans by blowing up trains, planes, and others. We just don't see it graphically.
Yeah.
Now, the bumbling part of this, where the Germans seem to be bumbling around, has caused some criticism because they definitely don't make the Germans look smart at all in this thing.
No.
But the violence part of it and what they do with the violence and give us violence without giving us gore is, I think, really, really cool.
Yeah. I mean, it was a decision made early on that allows the audience, us watchers of the show, to cheer for the POWs and their efforts to thwart the Nazis at every turn. So, we are. But again, like you said, there is violence, but we don't see it. So let's look at another reason why this is successful, but it's a serious reason. The Holocaust context. I mean, we know what really happened in World War II, and it was a travesty what the Germans did. Some critics initially found that the show was tasteless, given its lighthearted portrayal of a POW camp during a dark, dark period in history. However, the creators and several cast members had personal connections to the Holocaust. Bernard Fine and Albert Ruddy, the show's creators, were Jewish, and some cast members had escaped the horrors of Nazi persecution. Their perspective adds layers of complexity to the show's seemingly frivolous premise. Werner Klemperer, for instance, Colonel Klink, who twice won Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Comedy Series, was born in Germany. His father was Jewish, as was his grandfather. He accepted the role of Wilhelm Klink during the Nazi regime only on the condition that Klink would be portrayed as a fool who never succeeded. And
I think they hit that.
Yeah. And in one episode, this is highlighted. Major Wolfgang Hochstetter says, this is a great line from Hochstetter, the major. My superiors in Berlin feel that there are two dangers to the Third Reich, the Allies and Colonel Klink. And in another one, he says,
Klink, you are succeeding in doing by yourself what millions of enemy soldiers are unable to do. Bring the Third Reich to its knees.
Yeah, now one that I really like here is Klink says, I can assure you of my fullest cooperation, to which Hochstetter says, that's what worries me.
Yeah. So constant mocking the Germans from the POW side of the fence, but also the German side of the fence too. They're mocking each other, or at least certainly mocking Klink. So yeah, Stalag camps in real life were no place any prisoner of war would want to be. But here, the goal was to make the Nazis look like fools and have allies doing everything to take advantage of this played up stupidity to help the Allies win the war. There are hundreds of lines delivered by Hogan about the Nazis, and all to make fun of them. Like when things were not going so right for the Germans, I think Hogan said to, I think it was one Hochstetter or one of the generals or majors, you should have thought of that before you invaded Poland. Later, that was picked up in the Fawlty Towers series, actually. If you ever watched Fawlty Towers with John Cleese, oh, it was a fantastic show. Fawlty is serving the Germans who are sitting at a table, and this is what they say.
Is there something wrong?
Will you stop talking about the war?
Me? You started it?
We did not start it.
Yes, you did. You invaded Poland.
That is funny. I love Fawlty Towers.
Yeah. You didn't start it. You invaded Poland. When they're talking about, I didn't start the conversation. It was funny. Great stuff. Robert Clary LeBeau, his family moved to Paris from Poland after World War I. They were Jewish. So there are lots of important connections in the cast and the creators of this show.
Well, yeah, I mean, even John Banner, who played Schultz, Leon Askin, who played Burkhalter, were Jewish as well, besides the other people we've mentioned.
I think Howard Kane. I think Howard Kane, too, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So oddly enough, this show was even popular in Germany in the 1990s because even they wanted to be able to laugh at the Germans because, 1990s, they're not looking back thinking this was a good thing. So it was a very popular show in Germany in the 1990s. Pretty wild.
So another reason why this is such a good show is they robbed Hitler of posthumous power. So while Hogan's Heroes doesn't directly address the Holocaust, it does align with Mel Brooks's philosophy. Comedy can disarm even the darkest of subjects if you're willing to go there. And it often does.
Yeah.
So we have Brooks, who later directed the movie The Producers, whose big musical number in the movie was Springtime for Hitler and Germany.
Man.
So, I mean,
that's a great clip. Yeah. What else can you say? That's it.
Yeah, I mean, and they believe, Mel Brooks and the producers here believe that humor could strip Hitler of his posthumous power. I mean, in a way, Hogan's Heroes does the same thing, using laughter to undermine the Nazis' authority and power.
Every episode has Hogan's Heroes acting as spies, and every episode makes fun of the Nazis. We all know how the war ended, and the writers, of which there were many on this show, consistently delivered on this theme and the mission.
All right. Now, another reason this was such a good show is they took real events, sometimes twisting them. And one of them in particular, we just released our episode on the Heroes of Telemark, that movie.
Yes.
And that was all about heavy water and trying to get the plant that was producing the heavy water disabled. So the episode called Go Light on the Heavy Water, again, nice play on words, has a tie to that episode. So in this episode, a barrel of heavy water comes into camp.
Yep.
Told it was from Norway. It's heavily guarded. Now, they didn't specify the Vermark Norse hydro plant, but since that was the only place in Europe producing heavy water, we know it's the same thing. And the interesting thing about this is this episode was released in 1965, as was the movie, The Heroes of Telemark.
Yeah.
And in part, I think, because 3 years earlier, John D. Drummond wrote a book, But for These Men, which was based on those missions.
Yeah.
So it spurred an interesting, compelling story, and they took it into movies and into this TV episode.
Also in season 1, Hogan talks about the Norden in the episode Top Hat, White Tie, and Bomb Sights. The Norden was a real bomb sight, which was used to help drop bombs accurately. It measured the speed and direction of an aircraft using an analog computer to be more accurate.
And I like the fact that they use that, because they use this term, they talk about the bomb sight. The Nazis think he's going to tell them how this thing works. And he starts talking about something totally different. I'm not going to say what, but Hogan says, oh, that's this. And it has nothing to do with the bomb sight.
Right. Yeah. Synthetic fuel was also a reality. And according to the New York Times, in the mid-1930s, synthetic fuels were derived from coal. Between 1936 and 1944, Germans built 12 plants for this effort, producing more than 4 million tons of synthetic oil and gas. The Germans also had an operation called Operation Desert to use oil shale deposits for the effort. These tests were started in 1942. Construction of the plants used prisoners. So there are an episode or two in Hogan's Heroes where they blow up the synthetic fuel and so on. So again, a real tie to Hogan's Heroes and a real effort in the real war.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Operation Desert was the driving force for the episode called Oil for the Lamps of Hogan.
Yeah, okay.
Which was premised on the Germans wanting to build this synthetic fuel plant in Stalag 13, which was a thing they did. So in it, a man was introduced from IG Bowman Industries, and in real life, there was an IG Farben, which was involved in the shale oil production.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if they're kind of playing off of that or not.
Yeah. All right. We talked about some of the titles that we really liked. Season 6 gave us From Russia Without Love. Season 2 gave us To Gestapo with Love. And season 4 in 1968, Diamonds in the Rough, where a man gets paid off in fake diamonds. Kind of had a Five Fingers feel to it. Also, counterfeit money was used by Hogan to get Colonel Klink out of a jam in the episode Hogan's Hofbrau.
So we've got a bunch of different things where fake payment comes into play, whether it's Five Fingers or some of these Hogan's Heroes episodes. All right. Now, we mentioned earlier that the events in real life get referenced in Hogan's Heroes, but not necessarily in order. And I'm not going to go through all of them here.
No.
But one episode of season 5, The Big Gamble, and 3 episodes of season 6 mention the ongoing Battle of Stalingrad. Now, the characters learn at the end of this battle in a season 4 episode, and an episode of season 1 mentions the Allied invasion of Sicily.
Mm-hmm.
So it just, the events don't necessarily happen chronologically, but in trying to get that dose of reality to some of this, they call out some of these real world events or battles that were happening and make reference to them because they're involved in the war.
Yeah, that was clever.
All right, Dan, you mentioned To Tell the Truth. There's another TV game show that gets played on here because Hogan uses a variation of Steve Allen's "What's My Line" catchphrase, "Is it bigger than a bread box?" Now that thing was coined in 1953.
Yeah.
So it's again, they're bringing all this stuff in, trying to give you the cultural feel of what's going on.
Yeah. A lot of the titles were good. Thanks for the Memories. Guess Who Came to Dinner? The Missing Klink. I love that one.
The Missing Klink. Yeah.
Hogan's Heroes expected a 7th season, but it was canceled. So we never got the final show, which would have been interesting to see what happened to everybody, right? Getting released from the prisoner of war camp and so on, see what happened. But we never got that. They expected a 7th season and it was canceled. Hogan's Heroes remains a popular and iconic show with a dedicated fan base and continued reruns on various networks. Right now, it's on Freevee with commercials, and I think you can get it a couple of other places as well.
Yeah, it seems to always be on somewhere.
Yeah, the show's unique blend of comedy and the wartime setting has made it a memorable part of television history. The show received multiple Emmy nominations and wins, particularly for the performances of Werner Klemperer and John Banner. They were just absolutely fantastic. So next time you watch Hogan's Heroes, remember that beneath the slapstick and buffoonery lies a clever spy show where the prisoners play both the jester and the strategist. It's a unique blend of history, humor, and heroism. Hey, what do you think, Schultz?
I hear nothing. I see nothing.
That's a wrap of Hogan's Heroes and how they helped win the war. And as Colonel Klink tells us,
dismiss.
All right, this has been Dan
and Tom
of SpyMovieNavigator.com and our show, Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. Subscribe to our show and our YouTube channel as well. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it.